Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. This is your host, Jason Schnitzer, and I am the husband coach. Here's your next episode. Hey everybody, Jason here again, and what I've got for you on this pod is I'd like to talk about how to rewire your relationship with failure. I think, at least for me growing up, I had a huge fear of failure. And it wasn't until I got into my late 20s, probably, maybe even early 30s, that I really confronted that. And one of the reasons why it's so important for me to do that is like when you get on the path of self-growth, when you're an entrepreneur and you're learning new things and you're pushing towards your growth edge, you are inevitably going to run into failure. And your relationship to failure there's a direct correlation to that and how successful you are in life. And what I mean by that is like anybody who's done anything great has started out not good. Even the people that are quote unquote gifted, let's say, they still had aspects of their whatever it is that they were doing that they were new at, right? Nobody got to be a professional. There's a saying about 10,000 hours, right? Nobody gets to be that level as an overnight success. And it's like, and even that concept where it's like, oh yeah, you work 10,000 hours and you do things over 10 years and then all of a sudden you're an overnight success. It's like the overnight success happens in the 10 years that you put in the work to get there. And for some reason that just like never clicked for me until I was older. And a lot of that had to do with my ego, right? And it had to do with the fear of failure. And really, the whole idea of the fear of failure and how to rewire that is it's not so much the failing part, right? And it's not so much the living life part and going after what we want in our dreams. It's like when you think about what you really want to do in life, right? And the fear of failure, it's the emotions that are tied to the fear of failure. That is what we actually rewire in the work that, that I do. Because it's like, okay, fear of failure. What is that? Well, it's shame, right? It's disappointment. It's embarrassment. There's disconnection involved potentially, depending on, the feeling of letdown in a way, for parents or friends or spouses or your wife. There's the uncomfortable feeling of what other people are going to think. So that is all wrapped up into failure, right? And at least for a lot of people that I've worked with, myself included, when our perception and our body's perception of failure equals all those things, well, of course, we're not going to want to do something and then look dumb or fail at it, because that is, in a way, can be overwhelming for you, just like the feelings and the thoughts about that. But it's like the crazy paradox is there's no way to get to the top of any industry. You ask anybody at the top and they'll all say is they failed their way to the top, right? And what I mean by that is like they tried something, it didn't work. But then after that, they went back to the drawing board, got a little better, put something else out there, failed, went back to the drawing board, tried a little more, failed, and so on and so forth until you get to the top. And the hard part is we as humans all have this. Like there's very few people that don't have a fear of failure to a degree, right? Because if that were the case and we all were not afraid of failure, well, like everybody would be living their best life. Everybody would be doing the job that they really wanted to do. Everybody would be chasing their dreams, right? I don't know about you, but not very many people chase their dreams, right? A lot of people will work a job that they don't want to do for money because they're afraid to risk things to be able to like bet on themselves to do to like chase what it is that I'm just talking about. And that's not to like shame you. That's just to give context to the idea like it's a very, very common thing, right? And again, it's rooted very deeply in our biological wiring. And I've talked about this on several different podcasts about our need for acceptance of everybody else, right? Because a lot of times, like when you do crack the code finally and you're able to rewire your relationship with failure and you find the right support that can help you do that, all of a sudden it's like you are breathing air that not very many people breathe. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes with that too, right? You're doing things that other people couldn't fathom doing. So it's harder to find people to relate to when you do have struggles on that path. And also it's like whenever you're doing something that somebody else wishes that they do for themselves, it's like then you really find out they're good, what kind of friend they are, what kind of family member they are. Because when you are doing something that somebody else is doing, that has the potential to trigger something deep inside them, a level of resentment, right? That you're doing something that they wish they could do for themselves. And that doesn't really sit very well with some people, right? So not only do we have our own, set of fears around failure, right? Everybody else that is in our close circle has their own set of fears around failure. And that can very easily be projected onto you. A lot of times I think of like the crabs in a bucket analogy, where it's like a bunch of crabs in the bucket. One starts to climb out and all the other ones grab onto them and, no, don't get out of the bucket. Stay safe in here because, we want you to do good, but we don't want you to do, that much better than us. So how to rewire your brain for the relationship with failure. It's hard to do by yourself, okay? I definitely don't recommend doing most of this work by yourself. We are a species that requires connection, and there's a lot of healing in connection, safe relationships. So that's what I'd say, number one. Number two, start building your capacity to sit with uncomfortable feelings, right? My motto, face the storm. So when you are able to sit with your storm, right? And the storm is all of the uncomfortable feelings that surround fear, right? The fear of failure, the fear of feeling the feelings around failure. When you can build your capacity to sit with those feelings and realize that there's a part of you that can handle that, right? And choose from that other part of you to do the things necessarily to move you forward, well, then you can start giving yourself experiences of doing the thing that you wanted to do, failing, and you didn't die. I mean, at least for me, like when I would fail, like sometimes it would feel like I'm dying, right? Part of me would be like, don't do this because you're gonna die, like literally. And after a while of, again, starting off small, right? Stepping out of your comfort zone, getting into that growth edge, doing something that's a little bit uncomfortable, and then all of a sudden, like consciously proving to yourself, like, oh wow, we did this little uncomfortable thing and it didn't suck so bad and we didn't die. And once you're able to do that for a long enough period of time, it's like you're building your capacity to take on more and more and more and more and more. Most people, when they start trying to do this, is like they take an all or nothing approach and they're like, okay, I'm just gonna jump off the deep end, I'm gonna go all in, and they wonder why they fail like big time and it doesn't work, is they didn't build their capacity and ease their way into the process. Change takes time. It takes rewiring. When you're rewiring your brain, you can't just like change everything in an instant. We have this cool thing called neuroplasticity, which means our brain is malleable. Like the pathways that we have built, you can like rewire them over a period of time. When I think about change within yourself, think about it as like turning the Titanic, right? Or a big ship. It's like even if you crank the wheel all the way over, it's still like inches its way over. And also too, it's like if you want to lift 100-pound dumbbells and your like max is like 20 pounds, like don't just go to 100 pounds, go to 25, then go to 30 and 35 and 40 and so on and so forth. And once you start building your capacity, and you'd be surprised like how quickly this happens, then all of a sudden you are able to like sit with those uncomfortable feelings when you sit in your own storm. And instead of, avoiding the feelings, or instead of coping with the feelings, you allow them. You get curious about why they're there in the first place, and you actually befriend them in a way. You start to harness the power of all the shit that's going on inside of you. And when you're able to sit with that stuff, it doesn't seem so scary, right? Especially when you give yourself experiences of the opposite time and time again. And at least in my experience, it's like a snowball. You just like starts rolling at the top of the hill. It's this small little thing, and then next thing you know, it's just like an unstoppable force. And it just gets more exciting as the process goes on, because it's like, another analogy would be, it's like you go surfing, right? And you start off with like 1 to 3 foot waves, and it's all crazy and wild because it's a new thing, and your body is like in shock because you're doing a bunch of stuff that you've never done before. But then guess what? After a few months of that, 1 to 3 foot waves just doesn't even seem fun. It's like, no, give me the 5 and 6 footers. And then, a year later, you're surfing like the 10-foot waves, and you're trying to get in the barrel and all that. And that's the exact same way you can rewire your brain and your body's responses to the fear of failure. And that happens in relationships where, you can share fears. You make the implicit explicit by talking about the things that you're afraid of, and then taking small steps to face those fears, face a storm. Step into that. Part about moving into the masculine is being able to confront things, is being able to follow your purpose. And probably the most masculine thing you can do is go after the thing that you want in the face of all of those feelings. And the best part about it is if you build like this, instead of, maybe bypassing or just like overriding your feelings and doing it anyways, or using substances, etc., you build your capacity. So when you get there and you're like doing the thing, like you are so ready to take on all the challenges that come with those new levels. And, because it's like every time you take a step up, your body's going to be like, are you sure? Are you sure? And you'll have built up so much proof by then that you're going to be able to just tackle anything. And again, this is like a core part of training with me, and some of the things that I've overcome for myself and have seen exponential growth in my personal life, in my business, and in my relationships once you're able to overcome this fear rewire, if you will. So if you have any questions about coaching with me, check me out on Instagram. There's a link in my bio there, Jason Schnitzer Coaching, to work with me. Also, jasonschnitzercoaching.com. You can check out all of my stuff on there and apply to work with me there too. Hopefully you guys found this podcast helpful, and I'll catch you in the next one.